Nate. Didn't see that. You didn't see it. Well, 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 well. Settle down, settle down. All right. Hi again, everyone, and welcome to the deep dive of Project Nova. 1 + 1 = 3. Someone said something. You. My firm belief is that Project Nova and EVE Online can become something more than just two games in the same universe. And I also believe that we need both great FPS fundamentals and a crafted new player experience and progression before we achieve that vision. And 87% of surveyed EVE players agreed. Our vision is to create a long-lasting game with ongoing and continuous development without sequels and resets. Our strategy is to launch our game with a handful of quality features, what I refer to as the foundation, into the hands of a dedicated community and build from there. Our priority is the core first-person experience, the shooter through the gun experience itself, and the moment-to-moment gameplay. Therefore, we decided to start working with Sumo Digital, specifically their Nottingham studio, who have extensive FPS experience with individual team members having worked on GoldenEye, Battlefront, Homefront Revolution, and Crysis, to name a few. One of their lead designers is here at Vegas, and he will be joining us for the roundtable later today, if you want to ask him questions. The last time we showed Project Nova was at FanFest 2016, when we allowed attendees to play a 6 versus 6 PvP game mode inside the Chimera carrier, revolving around two mercenary teams, hacking into a ship's mainframe to steal vital information for the highest bidder. The vision for this demo was to deliver an FPS with great fundamentals, controls through the gun experience, and second-to-second gameplay. And we passed that test. We got a lot of positive feedback, especially about the performance, frame rates, and overall weapon handling, which is exactly what we wanted. But at that time, we essentially started co-evolving the game with community, because we took all your feedback back home and categorized it against our own game design pillars. And these game design pillars, they provide or drive the decision-making for the whole game. I've taught a lot about FPS experience, EVE Authentic, deep progression, tactics and teamwork, and highly replayable. These are our game design pillars. And EVE Authentic doesn't just mean visuals and audio. It also terms like Death Matters, Sandbox, social gameplay, the Infernal Machine, mining, looting, crafting, or manufacturing. But it doesn't mean EVE copy either. We have the freedom to retain, improve, and iterate on features and what they mean for an FPS. But we don't only listen to the community about FPS features or shooting or crafting or fitting. There's a joint feeling in the development team that we weren't finished with the war clones and their journey, but we also listened to the community about the lore. So a dedicated part of the community inspired us with their written accounts of survival, of Project Avalon and the Bocino Accords. And they have been integrated into our storyline and are now somewhat canon. And leading into that, I want to use the opportunity to remind everyone to check their emails, Kasia is actively recruiting grizzled veterans into her defense program. And there is currently a limited time opportunity to claim your surviving war clone's name and have it carried into Project Nova, as well as the exclusive Phoenix drop suit. So check your emails, please. Yesterday, I talked about Onslaught, and now we can get into a few details. So the Sanshia are targeting spaceships. They're neutralizing their capacitors and then deploying infantry troops to breach and enter. This is a conquest game mode in a race against time where 4 players try to manually power the ship up before the Sanshia gain full control. The objectives are charge points that can be captured, and when captured, they power up nodes that allow installations to be built, basically electric sockets for maintenance and defensive purposes. The charge points are procedurally placed as well as the lander location. The AI is controlled by an AI director, which is a combination of wave manager, strategy manager, and behavior manager, allowing it to dynamically respond to player actions. And the combination of these 3 elements results in something that we call a different battle every time. But we did not want to have PvE play out like a PvP match. We wanted to have a completely different experience. So we took inspiration from tower defense games and gave each enemy archetype a main behavior. Individually, each of these can be learned, but the difficulty quickly ramps up as you encounter more enemies at the same time of the different archetypes. This is flexible and allows us to easily add new enemies over time. So, Sanshia's Nation. The lore hounds here know more than others about this elusive faction. But we're not offering a storyline in Project Nova. It's not a CCP thing. We, however, want to allow the player to discover interesting facts, memories, or tidbits, lore, through something we call memory fragments. The player himself is very fragmented. His mind has been cloned 1,000 million times, maybe okay, overstating it, 100,000 times. And we will discover over time through these memory fragments of how it came to be, what happened really when the war clones were eliminated, and all those things. And who is behind these new attacks? Is it a trusted lieutenant that's picking up the mantle of Sanshia Kovake himself, or is he remaking a return? These are all questions that we want to address over time with the new Eden lore team, so with help from Eve, and the event teams. The enemies you're facing are the still living remains of true slaves, callously used up through hazardous labor and encased in a grotesque cybernetic body. Kept comatose and fed a chemical cocktail called bliss, they're mostly unaware of their actions. And this is what inspired us when we were starting to think about what a Sanshia enemy looks like. This is a Victorian death mask of a child with this bliss-like facial features. Moving on to PvP. It's not something that we're playtesting here and now, but it's something you'll be able to get your hands on immediately in November when we start ramping up playtest in the alpha. So PvP is alive and well, don't worry about it. It's a unique two-way escort or payload game mode, where both teams are responsible for pushing their own payload. It's 16v16 PvP. That is a number that we chose for various reasons, mostly because I enjoy it the most. The attacking team has landed on target, brought their own pilot, and established a beachhead. They aim to eject the current pilot and make away with the ship intact. As the payload progresses towards the destination, Their paths will lead them close to charge points that may or may not be under their control. This calls for communication, both in the pre-game, before anything has happened, when players are selecting their battle kit and which dropsuit they want to use, and during battle, especially when factoring in installations and charge point strategies. A part of the team must push its own payload, a part of the team must push the enemy's payload back, and part of the team must be scouting ahead to secure charge points and defending them. Combined forces of cloaked infiltrators, scouting ahead, assault clearing the way, logistics setting up the fortifications, and sentinels defending. This all takes place on the iconic Minmatar battleship, the Maelstrom. And how did we end up with a Maelstrom? We wanted to make sure that the size of the ship supported the gameplay we were offering, the number of players, and the number of AI, which meant we were looking at battleship sizes or bigger. We also wanted to have some epic views, and we wanted to have some be on places or ships that EVE players would know intimately. So here are some explorations of potential battlefields in Project Nova before we picked the Maelstrom. There's a couple of places, the Hyperion, Scorpion, the Archon, and then Maelstrom. Even if starbases and outposts have been phased out and replaced by citadels in EVE, they still provide us a lot of inspiration of what a mercenary stronghold could be, anchored to a plasma planet or a beautiful sun. We really want to try to explore the EVE universe. We shouldn't expect the next map to be an EVE spaceship. We should expect something different, something bold, something that you've always wanted to see from that point of view. And obviously, so that's the Minotaur, which is an early concept. And obviously, we're also exploring what the Sancha interiors could look like. And yesterday I mentioned that Project Nova has all new content. Let's take a closer look at that. One thing I wanted to mention was that we decided to go further or beyond the 4 empires for inspiration, which is why we specifically chose the Mordu's Legion to be the first dropsuit that we made. It's the medium assault, and it's called Assault. Quite original. It's difficult to find a better name. I can guarantee you can. I've tried. The Assault Grab ability, which is a unique class ability, is a slide to either get into cover or get up close and personal. One thing that we've learned is that if you don't have a unique ability per class, you start ending up with roles encroaching on one another. So a very heavy light becomes like a light medium and vice versa. So we really wanted to make sure that you couldn't really just fit into every role. This is the Minotaur Infiltrator. He has the hover grab ability, allowing them to get behind enemy lines or even just behind a single enemy, shoot them from above, or get above cover for a sniper shot. So this is one of the most fun things to do, is to hover snipe someone in the head. That creates a lot of screeching and yelling and playtests. Finally, the Sentinel's high G ability, a Kaldari class, is effectively siege mode, which grants increased accuracy and rate of fire. And this is actually one thing that we really wanted to try to enable with these class abilities, is that they don't only function for one style of gameplay. So my favorite Sentinel fit is currently a Sentinel shotgun, which is maybe not that common. It's a heavy guy, can't run fast, can't get into close proximity, but the high G ability reduces spread massively. So effectively, I can snipe with my shotgun from long distances, which is fantastic. It's everything I wanted. And then planned drop suits. We have a couple of drop suits in the pipeline already. This is the Galente Commando, the heavy assault. This is the thing that I will exclusively be playing. And a Sisters of Eve logistics. What? Oh, no concept, no. Got to keep something. So, weapon concepts. So you know that the weapons of Project Nova are much like Eve's weapons, inspired by modern weapons, and then reimagined in the far future. They're scientifically grounded rather than fantastically. This is the Kildari rail rifle. And this was the Minmatar bolt rifle. And this is the Amar pulse rifle. So you can see that we've applied the unique shape and design languages of the Eve universe and the Eve factions on top of our modern weapons plus. Is anyone excited about this weapon? Some Amarians in the group. So we actually, I'm going off script here. I'm a super nerd on the weapons. So I really went into how we could reflect all of the technologies of Eve as well. So I'm not an Eve player. I understand Eve a lot. I've been working at CCP for 12 years. Always followed Eve. And these are the things that make me excited when I'm trying to design something or get a feature up and running in Project Nova is I can always go into the wiki or ask someone in the canteen about like how does their weapon work, like because it's actually written down somewhere. There is a library or encyclopedia of all of these technologies. So I love the fact that we're actually using crystals as like ammunition. So that's something that I really wanted to get into the game as fast as possible. Same thing with this here. Don't know if it has a, so the Kildari, we designed like a full like spinning gravimetric thing inside that propels a rail projectile, etc. So we really went all in on trying to capture the Eve design and Eve philosophy. And then we just have the bolt rifle, which is simply a high-powered explosive firearm. Low tech, gets the job done, gets the job done. I'm not going to say there a concept of a Kildari rocket launcher exists. So these are the weapons that we have in store. The weapons you've seen are the service assault rifle, the sniper rifle, and the launcher. These are all the Upwell designs. Sorry, those are taking pictures. So what we decided to do was create a new kind of faction, or not create a new faction, use the faction to give the normal weapons. So what I kind of always missed was the change from like the standard grunt weapon that you'd kind of assume you'd be issued, and then going up to the elite Empire weapons. Like, I think they need to be earned in some way. So we created this faction that is more generic, if you will. We really just wanted to be familiar, normal, and then the upgrade into something that is a truly like a faction-based weapon becomes something. Wow, okay, it's a huge difference. There's real character in this weapon. So the one you've seen probably is the flak pistol, the Minmatar flak pistol, which is basically like an explosive Smith & Wesson, which is really fun. The two weapons you haven't seen, I'll go back, I'm teasing, are the particle prism, which is a laser shotgun, of course. And the fusion torch, which is a Galente flamethrower. something I've always wanted to make. So it's really like just a portable jet engine is what I would describe it. So those are the weapons that we have in store. Something near and dear to my heart is attachments. So as an FPS player, I have a very personal preference about my optics and handling and how I like my weapons. So I'm very happy to announce that we have something called global attachments, which is great for a player like me, and adds a whole new layer of customization into Project Nova. Again, something that is a big game design pillar for us is deep progression, and part of progression is customization. So here are the standard front grip, magnetic choke, swappable sights, etc. So this is a system that we will keep building on. And then a couple of planned weapons also in store. This was the Forge gun. So the only faction weapon that was missing from the first batch. This is intended to obviously shoot down heavy Sancha, for one. Also to shoot down heavy drop suits in PvP. So don't worry, you'll have plenty of victims even if you don't have a vehicle. And we're also thinking of really trying to embrace this idea of the kinetic damage. And these weapons will be passed through. So they'll keep going through enemies until they hit a wall or something. So the ultimate sniper, I would say. The second weapon is the pulse rifle that we saw a previous concept. And this is the proper one. This is the if people like the scrambler rifle, this is it's Mark II. Has everything you want: gold, crystals, and more gold. No, but we really kind of really wanted. I should have put it. The iron sight is actually the Amar symbol. Everything for you guys. Installations is one of the most interesting parts of Project Nova, and adds a lot of strategy and depth into the PvE and PvP. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say we've never seen this kind of base building or whatever you call it in a PvP game. So we're very excited about that. So each loadout has an installation slot. So you're bringing these in as schematics, and they allow you to build that kind of turret or installation when you have a powered node. Some drop suits, like the logistics, can effectively become the engineer class that can bring in more installations than the other classes, for example, is better at building them, can overpower them, can heal them, etc. So that's a specialization that we really wanted to kind of break away for the logistics. They actually had a real kind of they're not like a healing assault, which is what they were treated as sometimes. So they have a real important purpose in the whole game, both game modes. Sentries provide a lot of firepower. So this is the chain sentry, and then the rocket sentry, and then the EMP sentry. And this is pretty much a play on rock, paper, scissors against the AI. But the EMP sentry, for example, it de-shields, but it also confuses the AI. The EMP sentry also scrambles the minimap of PvP players. So it's more like a kind of an E-war thing, if you will. Rocket sentry is just a brutal high alpha, and the chain gun is really just a sustained DPS. And then we have depots, and one of those is a nanite port, which can grant temporary augmentations, so increased repair or et cetera, et cetera. So these are time-based augmentations. So you have to build it for the team. Everyone starts using it. Maybe that's the meta to build those. Maybe it's the meta to build all EMP sentries. We'll figure that out. And this all brings us to the loadout. And I've heard a lot of concerns that we're not making an EVE game. We're making a hero-based shooter or hero shooter, or we're not going to have all the depth. We're obviously going to have all the depth. We've adapted and adopted the concept of modules from EVE. And we're making a radical change from what we did before. And we're removing the concept of in-battle quantity. So we're introducing cooldowns only on all equipment, on active equipment. And players will be able to choose between passive modules, which give a always-on, lower power, and a higher bonus coming from an equipment on cooldown, or an active module. This gives us a great balancing tool and control over spam tactics, which were very prevalent in some of our older games. And then finally, the firmware slot is something that I'm very excited about. No. So firmware is a new concept in Nova. We wanted to apply a lot of what makes EVE, the EVE fitting game, so rich and flavorful, but add our own flavor. And we have an incredible amount. So this is just logos, guys. It's not like the... It represents the incredible amount of content that we can use to create variants and for both drop suits and weapons. And factions will be represented with firmware, giving a unique set of bonuses and penalties. So firmware has its own slot and follows all the rules of equipment, but it shares a similarity with rigs in EVE. So I think the easiest way to explain it is to, instead of getting a separate Navy issue ship, in Nova, you get a Navy issue firmware. You can apply that to your drop suit, but then if you want to remove it, you destroy it. So it becomes very kind of like, okay, I'm going to commit to this. Do I want another suit? I'm going to put, there's a meta that happens here, and it also ties into the fact that there's a risk-reward element to it, and there's it gives an angle in which a new meta can be born, but not necessarily switched as easily to fit the flavor of the month. You're sacrificing the last flavor of the month to fit the new flavor of the month. So you can't just go back. So this is something to think about. We think it has great potential, especially when you tap into all of these factions or corporations of EVE, tying into, for example, the fact that boundless creation, for example, maybe they become known as the firmware that gives plus 3% reload speed or something. And that becomes their flavor. And then you start to understand, okay, I got this from this family and this from this family, and you start to deepen the connection to all these corporations that actually don't have an in-game representation of any features in EVE, as far as I know. So now that we have the foundation, we can put it into our players' hands and start working on what makes Project Nova truly unique. With a game like Project Nova, it can be difficult to separate between what's at launch, what are we definitely doing, what are we thinking about doing, and what are we dreaming about doing. But today, I'm not going to lay out a multi-year roadmap of features. That's going to happen, but not until we get properly engaged with the community and they start giving us feedback on what we should and should not do in the near-term future. EVE Online is what we are trying to emulate in this regard. They launched with a small feature set as the foundation, and then they built on that with the community. They did not sit down in 2003 and say, this is our 10, 15-year roadmap. It can't be done, not in this day and age. So we want to build it with you guys. We all know that CCP games have a reputation for being difficult to grasp and get into. And we want to make sure, sometimes it's a pride thing, yes, but we should try to make it easier for our new bros. And we want to make sure that newcomers are introduced into the game with familiar concepts before we lay on the depth. And another thing is to contain power progression. That is a big part of our game design philosophy, is not to allow power progression to go out of control. So I'm going to explain this. I've tried in multiple press interviews this week, and I think I have the hang of it. So first, the player needs to acquire and earn new loadouts. These loadouts will have a default weapon, gear, and installation. They'll be ready to work out of the box. Experience has taught us that it's probably better to give a player a car with a steering wheel, tires, and an engine, rather than none of those things, and say, figure it out. As you play, you'll start to find your favorite loadout. You'll unlock loadouts through a loyalty system with Concord, really. And then when you find the right flavor you want, okay, this is the sniper guy, or this is the forge gun guy, or the heavy flamer guy, or whatever you want to call them. That's just the first step. And that's allowing new players to, okay, I'm using my FPS knowledge, I'm coming here and to apply it. Then we enter the class-based progression part of the progression, where you actually have to use this drop suit or loadout that you've chosen as your favorite, and now you have to upgrade it. And that is only done through using it. We're not doing passive skill training in Project Nova. So pick your loadout, use your loadout to progress. We'll upgrade the loadout, and upgrading it will give you more PG to work with. So you're creating more choices over time for that loadout. And the final one is the optimization. And that's the fitting game you all know and love. It's where the player starts min-maxing around the PG resource based on both personal preference and also what's like the best conceivable fit you can imagine if you're that kind of guy. And these are all things that are fully planned out for Project Nova. So I hope I've saved some or reduced some fear about this aspect for Project Nova. Risk and reward is also something that's heavily tied into EVE. And from our experience, a loss economy needs to be designed specifically for an FPS like Project Nova. We've learned the hard way that per-death penalties is not the right way. It makes FPS players very risk-averse. It really goes against everything an FPS, a modern FPS is. So we did not want to punish that behavior. I'm a guy that prefers to go 15-15 and win than go 15-1 and lose. But loss on death really makes people risk-averse. They go to their worst drop suit, they try to stay out of trouble, and they wait for the game to end. And that's literally what happened. So quantity-based management of drop suits and weapons is also something we wanted to avoid. Running out of a fit mid-battle is not a great experience, and it kept players out of battle, refitting, recustomizing in the market during battle. That's not the way to fight. So what we are doing in Nova is the concept of battle kit that I mentioned, which is a number of drop suits you can bring into battle, and those are basically your deck. You can pick from within that selection. This makes you need to think about tactics and strategy beforehand, before you go into battle, and not adapt on the fly to everything, because that's not really strategy. That's just busy work. Strategy is planning before battle. Our design proposal is therefore to use consumables per battle. And this is an interesting concept. So consumption per battle is basically you decide that you're going to use an equipment that has a limited uses, and once committed, you can die forever within that battle. You're not going to lose that power. but it's always going to be taken away from you from your inventory after battle. This is, for example, myself. Let's say I have a really rare weapon that I just got, and I have one of those. In Dust, I would really, carefully think about it. I'm going to use it now, and then die. The end. There's no satisfaction in that. In this scenario, I would commit this weapon to the battle. I'd be safe to use it, die, learn it, and then I would say, okay, that was great, or shouldn't have done that, or this was not the right time to do it. And this actually feeds into the end game. So a feature like Planetary Conquest and 0-0 and Eve provides both meaning and persistence and an aspirational goal for both the players and the player corporations and the whole of the community. CCP, we, the Project Nova team, have both the experience and know-how to make a meaningful, competitive, and exciting endgame experience, where the best of the best clash over a unique resource, pride, or just for the hell of it. The improved loss economy that I just talked about will make sure that the best gear is saved for these occasions, and also make sure that stockpiling and winning doesn't create a permanent king of the hill situation, which happened. Because if you never die, you never lose anything. And that happened a lot as well. So this is the most important feature to me in Project Nova, the end game. And the most important feature to get right. So it's not something we're going to get done in the very short term. And it's something that we will work with the community on doing, but that's absolutely what we intend to do. And when we've accomplished those features, and Project Nova stands on its own 2 feet, firmly on the ground, we can start discussing what is one universe, one war, and what the hell does it mean. That's also why it's so important that the Eve team and the Nova team are sitting next to each other in Reykjavik. And the sole reason why the project was moved from Shanghai to Reykjavik, if you didn't know, 2 years ago. We're going to need everyone at the table. Players, developers from both teams in full cooperation. And what I can share, since we've started talking to the Eve team, CCP Burger, Swimbjörn, who's hiding somewhere here behind, is that we agree what type of gameplay we want to explore. And I'm still going to say hypothetical, but these are a couple of hypothetical options. Oh, all right. I forgot to do it. I'll just say it. Limited resource trading. So in its simplest term, Nova provides a useful resource to Eve and vice versa. Even just starting with cosmetics, if we worry about game balance. You have a blueprint, you can make a unique skin in Eve if you get this resource from Nova. Done. That's an economic link that someone in the Eve universe cares about. The other thing is what we call asymmetrical gameplay. And I can list probably 20 ideas right now, just off the top of my head, what those could mean. But I've chosen the easiest one that I think describes what I call asymmetrical gameplay is the Moon of Endor and Algae. It's a small team, and in the context of reinforcement timers. Think about it. Don't judge, think about it. If you can sabotage or mess with someone in Eve, and they get the notification, then they can react to it. So let's say, hypothetically, that you have a citadel, and someone issues a contract to fight that citadel, an enemy corporation. You get notification that your citadel is under infantry attack. So you can deploy your own, or you can let it go and someone else will pick it up. If the sabotage team wins, they can move the reinforcement timer by ±1. Then you just have to think about it. Do you have to? If you think about it, it's quite cool, because it's something that you can plan for and you can react to. And it doesn't happen at the same exact time. which is always a scary thing. When combining two games, combining second-to-second gameplay is high risk and not necessarily worth it from a resource and time management perspective. I think this could things like this could shake up the meta. So we can talk about it at the roundtable, or you can yell at me at the roundtable. It's all fine. Another thing, just as I'm thinking, industrial sabotage. What if I mess with someone's production lines? I just delay your manufacturer. Like, you expected something to happen, then you open it up and it didn't happen. It's 4 hours late, or that kind of stuff. It's not that difficult to find ideas. So we're going to do that together. So I'm just going to call it today. Before we head into the roundtable, I just wanted to make clear also with the community that we intend to work very closely with you guys as we did in Dust 5.4. That means a shared development roadmap, rapid iteration, balancing, etc., and community feature requests, just as we did before. And that's a promise. All right, take a break before the roundtable.